If more folks end up joining, that is wonderful. Did someone just join? I guess not. But yeah, I'll just go through an intro to the biology lab notebook. I have it in a PowerPoint. But if you have any questions, what's nice about you joining the call, even though this is going to be recorded and I'll post this recording on Canvas, if there's anything that doesn't make sense, ask me right away and I'll stop. You know, it's not like I'm getting a monologue. So if there's
Okay.
anything that doesn't make sense, just feel free to chime in.
Okay.
And I suspect I know a couple other folks will probably join in, but this was very spur of the moment. So I'll try to give more advanced notice as the semester goes on when we do these kinds of things.
Okay.
Okay, so I need to share my screen. And can you see my PowerPoint now?
Yeah, now I can.
Okay, cool. I'm still nervous that these things can't be seen. So you're saying Introduction to Biology Lab Notebook?
Yeah, it's blue if you
Okay.
wanted to know the color too.
Yes, it is blue. Okay, so let's just go ahead and dive in. A little bit of history before get into the notebook itself. Scientists, naturalists, I mean, even just people who aren't scientists have been using notebooks to record their observations and work out their ideas for a long, long time. I mean, going even back to like ancient Greece and before then. So what I've asked you to do for the course is nothing new. This isn't like a novel approach to doing science. It's a very well established way of doing things. There's a rich history that we can draw on, lots of examples. I'll point to a recent example, and by recent I mean within the last couple hundred years, because notebooking goes back clear to ancient history. But Charles Darwin, I'm going to go ahead and say that's recent history. And we'll talk about Charles Darwin a lot more when we get to that part of the class, but I suspect you've heard his name before.
Yes.
In the 1830s, that's when he was doing his voyage on the Beagle. And that was 5 years he was doing that, which included a trip to the Galapagos, which is what he's most famous for. And throughout that entire 5-year period, he was recording in a nature journal, a biology journal, basically everything he saw. He didn't just go to the Galapagos. He started in England and he worked his way across the west coast of Africa, around the Horn of Africa, and then I forget the exact route. I think he went through Southeast Asia, and then he ultimately ended up in the Galapagos off the coast of South America. It was a long 5-year voyage. And so the Galapagos wasn't the only place he went. He went all over the globe. And throughout that time, he kept not just one journal, but multiple volumes of journals. He would note down his observations. He would draw pictures. He would work out his ideas. And it was really those notebooks that he kept for many years, because he was a young man when he did his actual voyaging. The common picture of Darwin is of an older man with a long white beard and so forth. So he was older when he actually published his book on the origin of species, but it was those books, those notebooks, that he drew upon to get his ideas and hypotheses together to actually posit the theory of evolution via natural selection. So it's thanks to nature journaling, biology notebooking, which I use those two terms interchangeably, that we have had this tremendous advance in the field of biology. And this, again, is not specific to the field of biology. I'll show another example here. Well, these are actually both biological examples, but just a couple of other ones. Even more recently, in 1940s, there's a graduate student. He's well known in the microbiology field, Albert Schatz. He kept very copious notes on all of his various laboratory experiments. It's a very different type of journal, really not a lot of illustration at all, but more written notes and then tables of data and so forth. And that is what ultimately led to his discovery of streptomycin, which is an antibiotic. Has probably saved millions of lives through time. So that's in large part thanks to his very copious notes that he was able to do that. Another Darwin example, it's hard not to go back to Darwin because he was very good at his notebooking.
That's fair.
Yeah, and he wasn't, you know, we often think of like scientists as writing things and taking down numbers. So he was a gifted artist. I mean, these are hand drawn with a nib pen, maybe some graphite here and there. And I certainly could not reproduce this, even with modern implements. It's really impressive what he was able to do. It looks like he did some corals, maybe some algae, and of course the Galapagos tortoise. He also did his finches. He's well known for describing the Galapagos finches that he used initially to propose his theory. These are just some well-known ones. Another one, and this is not a biological example, but just to show that scientists throughout time and in different disciplines have used notebooking, was Isaac Newton. He had this so-called waste book. I think that's what he called it, where he would just keep it in his coat pocket. And whenever he had an idea, he would rip out the waste book and note down his ideas. And he kept multiple waste books. He called them waste books throughout his life. But it was ultimately those random ideas that he recorded and notebooked through time that led to the development of calculus. He literally invented calculus. You know, unspeakably brilliant individual. And it was due to his habit of notebooking that he was able to accomplish that. And I mean, it's hard to attribute, you know, you could take a class on the technological advancements that have been made possible by notebooking, by calculus rather. I mean, basically every aspect of modern engineering depends on calculus in some way. It's just, it's a really interesting mathematical field, which we won't go into because this isn't a calculus class. But that's just an example of a non-biological journaler. So anyway, history aside, let's get to specifically what the requirements are for the biology lab notebook, which I'm asking you to do as the lab component of this course, because we're kind of delineating between lecture and lab. And so the lab notebook, the biology lab notebook, is our lab for the purposes of this online class. Okay, so you're going to create your own notebook, your own biology lab notebook. Okay, so I'm just going to run through a list of supplies. Most of these are pretty common. A regular pencil, colored pencils are a really good idea, along with a sharpener and eraser. You know, fairly normal stuff that most people probably already have. You probably already have some. If not,
Yeah.
they're very easy to get a hold of.
I draw a lot anyway, so I already have a lot of the, at least the colored pencils and sharpener and eraser and pencils.
And you can use other things besides that as well. I mean, I'm requiring a regular pencil and colored pencils, but if you feel inspired to paint something or use pastels or crayons or watercolors, you can feel absolutely have the liberty to use other media. I would say a regular pencil and colored pencils are the bare minimum. But if you want to use other media, that is completely great. I encourage it. There are a couple of other required pieces of material. One is a magnifying glass, and I went ahead and gave you a suggestion on the syllabus.
I got that.
Wonderful.
Amazon Prime works very fast.
Yes.
Even in quarantine.
Amazon is wonderful. I depend on it. And that's great that that link worked. You don't need to have that specific lens. That's just the one I recommend. If you already have a magnifying, I'm just saying this for other people as well. If you don't want to get that one, if you already have a hand lens or a magnifying glass, feel free to use the one that you already have. You don't have to use the exact same model. The other thing, it's not a magnifying glass. It's instead a portable microscope, which I have right here. And I'll spend an entire lab session giving an intro to how this portable microscope works. What's very important On the syllabus, I called it optional, but I've since changed my mind. I'm going to
Yeah,
require,
I saw that you actually made the textbook optional
yes.
and the portable microscope like, hey, you have to get this.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. Thank you so much for confirming that that the messages are coming through. I appreciate that. So yes, this portable microscope, look how portable it is. You can take it in your backpack anywhere. It's super easy to use. It's compatible with pretty much every computer, laptop or desktop. It's
It's not
compatible.
compatible with Apple products though.
It's not, I believe it is compatible with iOS, meaning that,
Oh, the one that I got isn't compatible with Apple, but it's
oh,
okay because I don't use Android anyway. I mean, I use Android. I can't
yeah,
word.
I don't use anything Apple, and
I can't
there
word.
are options available that do work with Apple products, and that's just not the one I've recommended, because most people have a Windows, a PC, or an Android. Um, for folks who are watching the recording, if you do have an iPhone or an Apple device, um, not necessarily compatible with this. I've read that sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. There are other, this the same manufacturer but makes a different model that is compatible. Again, completely compatible with PC and Android devices. You can hook it up to your computer, you can hook it up to your phone, and it's a really nice little portable microscope that will be a pretty, the reason why I changed it to required is that I'm going to ask you to do things for your biology lab notebook that will require you to look at small things that you can't see with your naked eye, specifically for the microbiology component of the class, that unit. There's going to be lab activities, weekly lab activities that you might be going in your backyard and looking at something that is really small. I mean, you'd be amazed about what you can find just by looking in your grass, rooting around in your grass with this thing. You'd be amazed what you see there, or at the local park, or even in a crack in a sidewalk. I mean, microbiology is everywhere, and that's why it's really applicable. So that's why I've asked you to go ahead and get it. And then for the notebook options itself, the physical notebook, there's a number of different options. One is you can get a traditional spiral bound notebook, one that kind of looks like this, college ruled, like 99 cents at the local store. Very simple. This is the kind of thing that I use for my field notes when I'm at work. Very, very straightforward. I am not an artist, so I'm more of a writer. And we'll
I
go.
think I think you'd like to know, like, I think either at Walmart or Target they'll have like those kinds of notebooks for like 10 cents each, depending
Oh
on like
yeah,
the brand. Like, bruh, too many notebooks.
even less than $1. That's great. So you can get something like this, super cheap, and it does the job well. And I mean, if you are a drawer and you like to do art, and if you're picky about, like, one of my colleagues is an artist, she does not use these because if there's all these lines in the way, and it's not the highest quality paper. Another option for you, which is a little bit more expensive, but up to you, you can get a sketch pad, which is something like this. And I gave you a recommendation for one on the syllabus. This is another option. And those, I don't have one right here in front of me, but it's like a harder, more robust type of paper. You can draw on it, you can paint on it. It'll hold multiple types of ink. Oh, looks like Annabelle is going to go ahead and bring up an example. That's wonderful. I'll just go ahead and unshare screen so that we can get another unobstructed view.
Sketchbook.
Oh, there you go. Something like that. And it's like $10 on Amazon, probably even cheaper at the local Walmart or Target. Very commonly used by artists. Totally.
I draw a lot, so I opted to get the sketch pad.
That's wonderful. And I think my personal recommendation would be, I want to make sure we're still recording. Yes. My personal recommendation would be to get the composition book, the sketch pad, because or both. I mean, you're turning it in a scanned version. So I mean, you could do some entries on a notepad, some entries in a composition book. It doesn't really matter. You're turning in scans either way. You could even use, I mean, if we're talking that way, you could even use loose leaf paper. The way you organize it's up to you. I personally like to have a book that I can have it all in one place, and I like to have it just simple and straightforward. And actually, I take that back. I do want you to have a single book. Ignore what I said about the loose leaf paper, because I'm gonna posit a certain format for the notebook. So one book, whether it be a composition book or a spiral notebook, that's your choice. I recommend the composition book because it's better for the type of notebooking that I'm going to ask you to do. Okay, so those are note on supplies. You can order the magnifying glass and the portable microscope on Amazon. Don't feel, again, like you have to get the exact same model that I've recommended. If you find something that you're more enthusiastic about or compatible with your device, get that. Let me know if you have any questions. But it's pretty straightforward, and it's really affordable. I mean, $20 on Amazon, that's cheaper than a textbook. So I figure if it's the decision between the textbook and the portable microscope, get the microscope, because that's what you're going to get more out of, in my opinion. Anyway. Oh, and by the way, just for you, Annabelle, and for folks who are watching the recording, I already went ahead and posted the first lecture session, right, which is under the lectures module on Canvas. I go over all the syllabus in that recording, which includes discussion about the textbook and so forth. And so some of this I'm already repeating if you've already watched that other recording, but this recording right now is for the lab specific, the intro to the lab notebook specifically. Okay. Anyway, I digress. So just some format. I want to keep the notebook as much in your court as possible in terms of your discretion about what you end up focusing on, whether you're more of a writer versus a drawer. You have to do a little bit of both, but you can bias it a little bit. I tend to bias a little bit more toward writing. Other people might bias it a bit more toward drawing. It's up to you. But there is a certain, I want to leave that up to you, but there is a certain format that I would like you to subscribe to no matter which way you end up going. And so I'll take a few minutes to discuss how I'd like you to set up your notebook. First things first, I'd like you to leave the first page blank. So if you have a brand new notebook, leave the very first page blank when you open it up. That page is going to be your table of contents. Okay, so leave the first page blank and write table of contents at the top. And let me break out, I'm gonna stop screen sharing here real quick.
Okay.
I'm going to break out one of my notebooks that I had when I was an undergrad, actually two of them. This notebook was the one that I used in marine biology, and this one was the one I used for animal diversity, basically zoology. So I had to do these when I was in school. These were my favorite parts of college. I have to say, I loved doing my own journaling. They have character, like this one I dropped in the ocean once, which is cool. If things like that happen to your notebook, don't worry. In fact, I think that's kudos for characters or rather journals to develop character over time. If it gets smudged with dirt, if a bug dies on it, if your dog pees on it, that's character. Okay, that's not something I'm going to mark you off for. But anyway, I assume for now your notebook is brand new and you haven't dirtied it up yet. My hope is that you do dirty it up. But anyway, back to the format. Here's my marine biology field notebook. Leave the very first page blank, okay? And write table of contents at the top. Are you seeing that as a mirror, or do you see the words in the right order? Do you see table of contents? I see it as a mirror.
Barely.
Can you read that, or is it backwards? I'm just curious because I see it as
I
a
can
mirror.
read that.
Oh, good. Okay, because I see it backwards. So when I hold this up, you should be able to see table of contents. This one has a little bit better distinction.
Yeah.
So table of contents right here.
Yeah.
First page. And then I'd like you to create three columns. Firstly, an entry column that describes what you're doing for that particular entry. So your very first entry is going to be the one I'll ask you to do today, which is like an intro entry. So introduction to notebook entry. Then the pages it takes up. So this very first entry will start on page 1, and maybe you do 5 pages worth of journaling. So you put pages 1 through 5, for example. And then the date. Okay, so again, leave the first page blank, write table of contents at the top, and then have 3 columns. The first column being the entry column, the second column being the pages, third column being the dates. Okay? That is how I'd like you to set up the table of contents. And I'm just, while I'm in this full screen mode, I'm not sharing my screen, I want to point out a couple of other things which are notable. Firstly, if you do go to, well, you will go to a natural field site, and I'll talk about the choice is yours about where you go, whether it be somewhere far away or somewhere here locally. I'll give you some local examples that you can choose from. If it's legal for you to do this, depending on where you are, you can collect samples to put in your notebook. If you're in a national park, for example, or a national forest, you can't do that. Don't collect samples if you're in conserved land. But if you're in a park or something and you find a leaf that you end up journaling on that leaf, and you get really interested in the texture of the leaf and the morphology of it, feel free to collect that sample and put it in your notebook. So, for example, when I took zoology as an undergrad, we went to an emu farm over near Solvang, which is near the coast. And we got to go feed emus. And emus are like smaller ostriches. They're related to ostriches. And so I picked up this feather and put it in my notebook, and I journaled on it at some point. In my marine biology notebook, I was walking along the beach one day in Santa Barbara, and I found a mermaid's purse, which is a shark egg. And I ended up putting that here in my nature journal as well. So if you find things that you want to include, as long as it's legal for you to do that, as long as you're not disrupting habitat or anything like that, feel free to make collections. Plants are very easy to collect. You can collect a plant and press it in your book, and as long as you keep it in a warm, dry place and put like a heavy textbook on top of it, it should dry out, and you can have that be a sample that you can then journal on. And it beats if that's just one choice, you could be a picture drawer, or you could do a bit of both. So for example, I did I collected natural samples, but I also drew a little bit. This is a fish I saw in a tide pool, very poorly drawn. As you can tell, I'm not an artist. Also, in written descriptions.
I thought it was a tank at first, actually.
No, it's a kelpie of some kind. This is actually my attempt at a sea slug. See, I'm not an artist. Feel free to make fun of me.
Nah, I don't make fun of people for their drawing skills.
Well, I'm sure your drawing skills are way better than mine. Various pictures of things. These are all just some examples, and I've actually posted on Canvas an example PDF of various people's journals, notebooks, I should say. Some of them are mine. Some of them are from people that have visited Tejon Ranch over the years and journaled at various places. You'll see that the art skills on those examples are way better than anything I could show you. But again, I want to emphasize, if you're not an artist, you do not need to feel like I'm holding you to the standard of those examples. I am not an artist. Look at how bad my drawings are. I care more about the passion and the scientific inquiry behind the biology you're notebooking, rather than some kind of artificial standard of artistic ability. That's not what we're going for here. This is a notebook. It's not an art piece. Okay. And I'm going to go through some examples here in a little bit. I'm just showing you this before I go back to screen share. Ooh, I saw a whale one day, you know.
That sounds fun.
Yeah. Marine biology was easily my favorite class besides plants when I was an undergrad. And then last thing I want to show you is if you want to do pictures. This is a little nudibranch, which is basically a sea slug with, you know, it's translucent. It's got orange gills and a purple body. It's living inside of a sea mussel. If you want to take pictures, a little phosphorescent organisms there in the tide pools, an octopus. That's sparring elephant seals in San Simeon, which you can go see around wintertime in February near Hearst Castle. Totally recommend it. They're really awesome creatures. Giant island Coreopsis on Anacapa Island. Anacapa boa kelp, which is endemic to Anacapa Island. I digress. Sea urchins. We'll talk about sea urchins very soon. Anyway,
Nice.
crab. So I want to leave the choice up to you. You have a lot of different choices in your repertoire. You can, and ideally, I'd like to see a little bit of everything, because that's what makes it makes it for a more interesting, more informative journal. Is you can collect samples and put that in there and journal on them. You can be a writer and write long descriptions. You can draw things and label them and go into great artistic detail. And you can take pictures with your phone and print them out and paste them in to your notebook. All of those are acceptable. I would ideally, again, like to see some combination of everything. But as I said, you might be a little bit more biased toward one way or the other. I myself am more of an analytical writer type person. I want to describe it, and I want to say how big it is and so forth. So anyway, with that said, I'm going to go back into my PowerPoint and carry on with the formatting. Back to where we were, very first page of your notebook. I would like you to make the table of contents on front and back pages, okay? And then the very page after that, so technically the second page of your notebook, if you're counting it by pages, I'd like you to start numbering in the upper right-hand corner. So table of contents, though that doesn't count in the page numbers, okay? So that's front and back. But then the very next page, page 1, the back of that, page 2, page 3, back of that, page 4, page 5, and so forth. That way you can keep filling in your table of contents as you go. And every journal entry, every week, you're going to have a different journal entry. Hopefully, maybe more than one entry, but at least one entry per week is what you have to do. Hopefully, as you do every journal entry, update your table of contents with what you did and so forth. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. Anyway, I'll show you my notebooks more a little bit later on. But anyway, that's there's the first page, and there's the kind of the broad setup. The other thing that I'm going to require that you do, aside from the table of contents and the page numbering scheme, the other thing that you have to do no matter what is a heading at the top of every page, okay? And it's very prescribed, it's very simple, very straightforward. This is a lot of text, I know that, but it's very simple. And this is every page, not every journal entry, but every page. On every page, include the following. An activity title, so whatever you're doing on that particular entry. So this very first entry, you can call that, the title of that entry is the Introductory to Journal Entry, or Introductory to Biology Notebook Exercise, something like, call it something like that. That has to go on every page, the title of the entry. Next, the date, the day, the time, and the season. So today, what is today? It's August 24th, I think.
Yeah.
August 24th, 2020. It's a Monday. It's about 1:20 p.m. or so, and it's summer.
1:31.
1:31 p.m. and it's summertime, right? So, so at the top of my page, Introductory to Biology Journal Exercise. That's the activity title. It's August 24th, 2020, a Monday at 1:31 p.m. in the summertime. Okay, all with me so far? Then note your location and your habitat. And by location, I mean at my house in Bakersfield, California. Or I'm in Yosemite National Park if you end up going there, which is cool if you do. You know what I mean? Like a broad description of where you are. In my backyard in Los Angeles, or whatever, you know what I mean? Something that's descriptive of where you're located. And then the habitat type that you're in. And this can be everything is habitat. This could be, you might be doing notebook entries of ants that are in your desk, that are crawling across your desk inside your house. That's ant habitat. So, you know, it could be in your backyard, it could be in your neighborhood, it could be on your porch outside, or, you know, and that will be probably the case for most of the journal entries you do, but at least one time, I'm gonna ask you to visit a natural field site, meaning a site where there's a destination where there's native ecosystems. And note, you know, in that case, Wind Wolves Preserve is a good example. That would be noted as your location. Wind Wolves Preserve, and then the habitat type. So I'm in the mountains, or I'm in a grassland, or I'm in a stream, or I'm in a bunch of trees. I'm in a forest. Something that broadly describes the habitat that you're in. Okay, so, and then the weather, okay, which includes the temperature. It's an estimate. You can do this by degrees Fahrenheit. The wind speed, which is usually between 1 and 10 miles per hour on a given day. You do an estimate. If you go over to the Mojave Desert, it's probably more like 20 to 30 miles per hour. The wind is a lot stronger over there. But here on the San Joaquin and Bakersfield, it's usually pretty mild. And then an estimate of cloud cover, and that's if you're outside. So if you go outside, and this does not count, like today, it's all smoky, so you can't even tell. I would probably put 0% cloud cover. But let's say you're going up and about half of the sky looks like it's cloud, and the other half is blue with clear sky, 50% cloud cover. And this is, again, a very broad estimate on your part. It doesn't need to be hyper precise. So let's just do an example. And this is, again, something I want you to note on every single page. Okay, and it can be very quick. The activity title, let's say we're doing one right now, and I'm noting it in my journal entry with a pen. Okay, I'm gonna note the activity title is Intro to Biology Notebook. Okay, the date is August 24th, 2020. The day is a Monday. The time is about 1:30 p.m. The season is summertime. I'm in my house in Bakersfield, California. Or let's just say, for the purposes of the demonstration, I'm in my backyard. I'm in my backyard in Bakersfield, California. The habitat is lawn. The weather is, the temperature is about 95 degrees Fahrenheit right now. I'm estimating that, I think. I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
And the wind speed is about 5 miles an hour. The percent cloud cover is 0%. I don't see any clouds. And that easy. And let's just go, it's literally something like this at the top of every page. Okay, very, very simple. And this is, again, is not something that's specific to every journal entry. Let's say a specific journal entry is 5 pages long. Note this every time you change pages. And the reason why is that, let's say on your okay, one week I'm going to ask you to take a walk around your neighborhood and do various things. I'll ask you to look at various things and so forth. Let's say at the very start of your nature walk, of your neighborhood walk, you're at the front door to your house, and that's where you start noting things. And that's page 1. And then you're noting things, and you go over to the second page. But now you're a half a mile down your street, and you're looking at one of your friends' yards, the plants in your friend's yard or something. That's page 2. But you're now no longer at your house, and maybe that's 45 minutes later. Maybe it's 10 degrees warmer. Maybe the wind picked up. You see what I'm saying? So every journal entry might be X number of pages. Note this at the top of every single page. It's a very quick, keep it quick. You don't need to write a huge long thing. Something like this.
Okay.
Okay. And then that's the prescribed part. So I've asked you to do 2 things that are prescribed so far: the table of contents with numbered pages, and then a prescribed title, or a series of metadata that we can call it. I call this metadata. All this is metadata. Note the metadata at the top of every page. Those are the only 2 prescribed things. Thereafter, it's up to you. Okay, and every week I'm going to be asking you to be doing different things. One week I'll ask you to take a walk around your neighborhood and look at various things. One week it's a microbiology one, and it's up to you where you go as long as you have the portable microscope. One week you're going to have a natural field destination in mind. Everything else is up to you. But here is an example, a good frame of mind to be in for how to actually produce material. Once you do this, if anyone is nervous about, oh, I don't really know what to talk about, nature journaling, what's this guy on about? I don't know about this. Once you actually start to do this, it's really easy to just keep going, and it's hard to stop. And so if you're a person who, if you're already there, great. If you're a little bit not sure about what to do, where to start, follow these guidelines. And this is guidelines that my colleague at the Tejon Conservancy put together. I actually posted. Let me stop screen sharing here for a moment and pull up my web browser. I'm gonna go to Canvas really quick. Okay, dashboard. If we go to our course Canvas page, and let that load. Okay, so you should have seen this already. Okay, the course Canvas page. If you come down to the biology lab notebook, this is where all this stuff is going to live. There's some resources for you here. One of them is tips for a good notebook, which takes you to this external link. It's a trustworthy link. It's the website from the organization I work for, the Tejon Conservancy. And this is my colleague, Paula. She's a retired educator, and she is an expert notebooker. She calls it nature journaling. Notebooking is the same thing. And these videos are here for you. She's basically talking about the same thing I'm about to express to you, but she does it in a more precise way. And so look at these videos that are available on Canvas as well. She put a little PowerPoint on there. It's actually part of a PowerPoint I'm using here. Look at these resources, and that can be a good complement to what I'm about to show you. And let me go back into the PowerPoint now. Okay, so that being said, this schematic is something that Paula came up with. Kudos to her. This is, the credit goes to her. So watch what I'm telling you, but then also watch her give her lecture on it, and you should be in a good place. Again, this format is really helpful for getting in the frame of view for doing a particular entry. And it's very helpful if you're not sure where to start. Okay, so this is what it is. Every journal entry should include ABC, 1, 2, 3, and then picture it. Okay, so keep that in mind. ABC, 1, 2, 3, picture. Okay, by ABC, that's What we mean by that is the written component of your journal. Okay. Every journal should have a written component. Every journal should have a quantitative component, and every journal should have a pictorial component. So ABC is the written. Those are your notes. Those are your descriptions. Those are your thoughts. Those are your observations, your reflections, the writing that you use to label a picture. So you want to note things like, let's say, again, you're out in your backyard and you see an insect, like a spider or something, and you become really interested in this spider. For the ABC component of this entry, I notice that this spider is larger than a daddy long leg. I wonder why this spider is so large. It reminds me of a black widow, even though it's not a black widow. So ABC, it's what you're actually writing. I notice, I wonder, this reminds me of. And then at the end of every journal, it's really good to write a reflection. So you've gone through a particular entry, and let's say you got really excited about all the insects you were seeing, and so you've done drawings of all the insects that you found in your backyard, and you've written eloquently about them, and you've taken pictures, and you've collected samples, and you've done various things, and you've got 10 pages of notebook entry. At the end of all of that, come back and do a reflection on it. It kind of ties it all together. Okay, so that's A, B, C. Okay, the next is 1, 2, 3, and that's the quantitative component, right? Because this is a biology lab notebook. It's not just a personal journal. So we want to be scientific as we possibly can. Science is about data. And so to the extent that we can, I really would like you to whatever you're noting, and again, what you're noting is up to you, to note the quantitative nature of your subject. So how big is it? This spider looks like it's about 1.5 inches long and 1 inch wide. That blade of grass is about 4 inches long, and or you could use millimeters. 600 millimeters long and 50 millimeters wide, whatever the case may be. Something quantitative. Okay. If it's an animal like a squirrel that you're observing in your yard, how quickly is it moving? This squirrel ran across my back fence, which is 50 feet long, within 10 seconds. The elevation that you're at here in Bakersfield, we're at about 300 feet in elevation. But if you go up in the mountains, obviously you're going to be higher in elevation. If you're looking at like a bunch of plants that are growing along the side of the road, how much percentage of the plants are covering that road, like on a sidewalk? Like this weed is covering 30% of the sidewalk, etc. Okay, so if the ABC component is the qualitative component, where you're writing, you're reflecting, you're wandering, you're noticing, you're making observations, and again, think about this in the context of the scientific method that was in the first lecture. If you haven't watched the first lecture yet, I'll go back and do that after this recording. I discussed the steps of the scientific method, which includes making observations, which includes asking questions, which includes forming hypotheses, which includes testing and coming up with conclusions. This is basically that. And there are going to be weeks for your ABC components of every journal entry where I'm going to be asking you to make an observation and have a question on the basis of that observation, and then form a hypothesis on the basis of that question, a potential explanation. And then I might even ask you to test it in some broad way, and then make a conclusion. So think about this in the terms of the scientific method that, again, we talked about in the first lecture session. The ABC component is the qualitative aspect of that. It's what you're observing, it's what you're wandering, it's what you're questioning. And then the quantitative component is like collecting data, the 1, 2, 3. How big is it? How much does it weigh? How quickly is it moving? Where is it? And so forth. And finally, the third component, remember this framework I'm asking you to think of in terms of your journal, ABC 1, 2, 3, picture, is actually visually representing what your subject is. And this could be as broad as a landscape, like If you're a landscape person, you like to draw mountains and trees and streams from a big macro level, it can be that. Or it can be really micro, like an individual ant, okay? The scale of, you have a lot of discretion in terms of what scale you're working on, okay? Some weeks I'm gonna call your attention to specific things, but other weeks I'm gonna ask you to decide for yourself what scale it is. And so for your pictorial representation, I want you to draw what you're seeing. If you're noting something at the landscape level, like, oh, all these trees are dead over here, and you're wondering why that's the case, and you're observing how many trees are dead or whatever the case may be, you're looking at something that's broad at the macro level. But let's say you're looking at an individual ant. It's just as relevant. Draw it, take a picture of it, collect a sample, and all of that is incorporated in various ways into your notebook. And so let me exit screen share one more time, and I will show you, let's go through all of this again for my notebooks that I did when I was an undergrad. Okay. So here's a specific entry. I called it Jaw Worms. That's my title. I did not subscribe to the noting the weather and stuff in this journal. So, you know, I'm asking you to do that. But I called this Jaw Worms. And I was at Yanacapa Island off the coast of Santa Barbara. And this was 8/31/2013. So just about 7 years ago now, apparently. So you'll notice I'm a bit more of an ABC kind of guy. You know, I like to note, I like to write stuff out. But my 1, 2, 3 is also in here. A brief analysis of jaw worms, blah, 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 blah. I'm noting how big they are, about 0.3 to 3.5 millimeters, distinctly elongate with a large head. You don't have to use really quirky language like I'm using here because this was a zoology class. I had to note things in a very zoological fashion. Feel free to use language that is suitable for you. But I'm kind of combining the ABC and the 1, 2, 3 right here because I'm broadly describing what it looks like, what I'm observing, but I'm also noting how big it is, how quickly it's moving, how big its jaws are, and so forth. And then I drew it. So ABC and 1, 2, 3, and then there's my picture. Okay, so does that make sense in terms of ABC, 1, 2, 3, what I'm asking you to do?
Yeah.
You know, more ABC, 1, 2, 3. You'll notice, see, I'm much more of a writer. I have pages on page. I have pages upon pages of writing. If you are more of a picture person, feel free to bias your journal toward picturing. Look, there is a chimpanzee that I drew one day. So, you know, you could have entire pages that are pictures, and then maybe you know, I didn't label this in any way, but you could then you know, label your drawing with the eyes. The eyes are black and about one inch long. The ears are large. You can note your observations. The ears are larger than human ears. The mouths are much longer than human mouths, and so forth. No, it's up to you how you frame it. But I guess in terms of one base requirement is that I do expect to see a strong effort in terms of like, okay, let's get down to brass tacks. This is a huge component of the class. It's a significant component of your grade. If you want to do well, I expect to see a fairly substantial effort, right? You have a lot of latitude in regards to how you focus this, but if I open up your journal, and this is going to be scanned, if I open up your journal and you have like 2 words here, an ant, and then you drew a little stick figure of an ant, it's not going to fly so well because that's obviously not a very serious effort on your part. I expect you to spend a good amount of time going through this, and you have a lot of latitude, as I said. Every week I'm going to give you a broad assignment, like today, the very first lab assignment. You'll have a broad assignment, but what you do, where you go, the types of subjects you focus on, whether you're more qualitative or quantitative, whether you're more pictorial versus written, that's up to you. The only thing I really would like to see is is a good effort, and that is uniform. It's very obvious whether something is a strong effort or not a strong effort. So in terms of grading, that is what I'm looking for. And I'll just add one more thing. This is the case with everything you do through life. Certainly classes in college, but anything. The more you put into it, the more you get out of it. And I just speaking from experience, I put a lot of effort into these two journals when I was an undergrad. I kept them to this day, where I threw away most of my textbook from undergrad because I didn't want to lug them around anymore. I've kept these because they really mean something to me. I wrote these, and I spent a lot of time, going through these. These are some of the things that I did, falling in love with my field. And I know these are biology major type things, but if you put a lot into your notebook, if you pour your passion into it and you get really into it, you're going to get a lot out of it. And it's going to be, by the end of the semester, it's going to be the kind of thing that you're going to want to keep. But if you don't really get into it, and I'm not speaking to you specifically, Annabelle, I'm speaking to everyone.
No, I understand.
Recording. If you don't really get into it and you just kind of do it to get by, not only are you not going to do as well, keep in mind, this is a huge component of the class. You're not gonna want to keep it later on. And this is the kind of thing that if you take it seriously, you'll really get a lot out of it. That's why I've asked you to do it. You'll get a lot out of this if you take it seriously. And I don't want you to be intimidated in any way. Don't take my language, you're expected to do this, you're expected to do that, as like an off-putting kind of thing. Do your absolute best. That is what's going to enable you to do well, and that's what you're going to learn the most from. There's my little spiel. So anyway, I'm going to let me know if you have any questions. And every week is going to be a little bit different. As I said, I'll post a document under every week so that you know what I would like you to do. But I think I'm not done yet. Let me go here. Okay, back to this. Here's some examples of the ABCD 1 through 3 picture. Should look something like this. And actually, this is just a formatting example. That's not actually what a page should look like. Taking note, ABC is taking notes, writing descriptions, labeling diagrams, like here's a picture of a petal, the stem, the leaf, flower, so forth. It's a reflection. I wonder, this reminds me of. 1, 2, 3 is the metrics, the size, the height, the speed, the weight, the elevation, etc. And then the picture is the sketch or diagram. And then at the very end, a reflection. I mean, this can be all sorts of things. In fact, I'm going to, even though it's already up on Canvas, I'm going to go ahead and open up Canvas one more time and show you the examples that are on there. Exit out of this. And biology, it's right here, biology notebook entry examples. These are not mine. These are from a slew of people who visited Tejon Ranch over the years. Here are some really good examples. Okay.
Nice.
And this is available for you on Canvas. So, I mean, noting the date, the time, the description of what's going on, note the title. And this is obviously done with loose leaf paper, right? Noting some kind of flower, how big it is, how many petals there are. This is all ABC 1, 2, 3, a reflection. These are some horses on the ranch. It's labeled really nicely. It's eating grass, hooves, etc. This is a journal entry on, looks like an invasive mustard, Hirschfeldia, I would imagine. It's
mustard
a plant,
could be invasive?
Oh yeah. A lot of mustards are highly invasive.
I wonder how they get it into the condiments then.
Well, mustard, the condiment, it's made out of mustard seed, and it's a very specific type of mustard. And it's in the genus Brassica. We eat a lot of mustards. Think about cauliflowers and broccoli and
Those are
s- and,
mustards?
and yep, those are mustards.
Huh.
Spinach, and in fact they're all the same plant. Um, what are they? Brussels sprouts. They're all the same plant. They're just different cultivars. They're all brassicaceous in the Brassicaceae family. I digress. Yes, we do use it's ground up mustard seed and put into a paste form is what we use for the condiment mustard. So we but the plants mustard, the plant family, it's a big genus. They're not all the types of things that we use to eat. There's the mustard. There's mustard that we eat, and then there's plant mustards. I digress. Anyway, this is a little journal entry on mustards. Kind of fun. Ladybugs here. This is them massing on a big log. This is an old dilapidated cabin on Tejon Ranch. A little horned lizard over in the Mojave Desert. This is some First Nations hieroglyphs. We call it Compass Rock. About 10,000 years old, it's thought. No, well, at least several thousand years old. No one really knows. This is one of mine. Obviously, you can tell not as high a quality. Again, mine. My attempt at a hummingbird right here. Again, mine.
You did your best, and that's all that matters.
And the same goes for everyone in the class. Do your best, and that's all that matters. If I look at this, I mean, I know I'm judging myself here, but I actually remember this day. This was on Anacapa Island, and I really got into it. And I was journaling on different kelps and different snails. This is probably somewhere else. I saw a hummingbird somewhere, and I noted it. Back on Anacapa Island, noting different things. I got really into it. And even though it's very poor art skills, it's the passion, it's the effort that goes into it that counts. Right after this is not mine, obviously. Whoever journals on the ranch really tends to focus on invasive plants. This is an invasive thistle, but it doesn't matter. You can. That's just my botany bias. You can look at this. They've got ABC 1, 2, 3 picture all put together perfectly here. They put their title down here at the bottom, so it's a little bit different format, but beautiful, beautiful artwork. And then look, and this is their 1, 2, 3, or rather their ABC and their 1, 2, 3. I mean, they did it in beautiful little bullet points. Very tall thistle, 5+ feet. Little bird kept coming back to flower nectar. Hummingbird here. Bees buzzing around, and they got bees here. Birds singing. Wind rustling through nearby trees. Butterfly, which is kind of dark in coloration. Some dried seed heads. And this is one of the best journal entries I can think of in terms of this is a teacher in Bakersfield, I think, who did this. You can look at reading these bullet points and then looking at the picture. Notice how this person said little bird kept coming back, bees buzzing around, birds singing, wind rustling, noting it's a very tall thistle, it's 5 feet tall. All that information, both pictorial and written and quantitative, it puts you there, doesn't it? You can imagine what it was like for that person experiencing it. That's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to, this is the perfect example right here, and I'll note that. Similar here. I think this is probably the same person, noting a bunch of pines and oaks. I'll let you look at this at your own pace. If you're not a plant person and you got more of a like an animal bias, that's totally fine. Noting this is a beautiful drawing of a red-tailed hawk and one of its feathers. More mint, something like this, something like this. I'll let you look at this. I'm going through them quickly now. A poem, if you're more of a poetic person, if the urge strikes you to write poetry, that certainly can be a component. You can't just write poetry. I'll emphasize that, but it can incorporate parts of that. And then these ones at the bottom here are actually Paula's, my colleagues, and they subscribe. This is her formatting, after all. These ones subscribe especially well to the formatting that I've set in place for you.
Nice.
And with that said, I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint one more time.
Okay.
Are you seeing the PowerPoint?
Yes, I have.
Okay, and it went back to the beginning, so
Those
Okay,
are all
and
nice entries.
yeah, and these are just more examples. This is everything we've just been talking about. The metadata, which is the heading, the location, the place, the time, the temperature, the wind speed, etc. And then following the ABC 1, 2, 3 format, I wonder, this reminds me of reflection. 8, 1, 2, 3, how big things are, how quickly it's moving. So like skull, 8 inches wide, 9 inches, 19 inches long, a picture, and so forth. Okay.
Oh, I thought this was my screen for a second. I got confused.
Oh no,
I got confused.
nope. This is just another example. Calcordus venustus, which is a beautiful, beautiful lily in the lily family. All these are just. I mean, this is. I don't put these on here to intimidate you. In fact, I put my journal entries front and center just so you could see the range of different approaches that different people use. Some people.
I'm not intimidated at all.
Great.
It's kind of inspiring, actually.
Oh, it certainly is. It's an excellent way to. It's an excellent hobby to have. And if you are, I would say, do your absolute best. Where I am today, if I were actually willing to, in a class, if I had the time and where I am, I could probably do better than what I showed you in my pictures, right? The pictures that I showed you, that I did, were really bad. I probably could have done better if I really, really tried. I wasn't being instructed to do art, right? But if you are moved to do that, you'll really enjoy it more. Just some other things. Compass Rock again. You've seen these before. I mean, these are in the example. These are in the example document. One of mine. Yeah. Okay. So I'll just go through this really quickly here, because you've seen all these. Okay. Anyway, so I hope that's a good intro to the biology notebook. For this week, because this is the first day of class, right? The first day of the semester. Every week you're going to have a different lab notebook assignment that you will have a week to do. I will generally release them on Monday. Maybe sometimes a little earlier, but generally I'll release them every Monday, and you'll have until the following Monday to do it. Okay. And so this is the assignment I'd like you to do for this week, is to pick a single living thing, i.e. a pet, a plant, an insect, a single organism where you live or where you work, somewhere around your normal sphere, and spend 45 minutes to an hour journaling on it, notebooking on it, using the format and the principles that we've described so far. The title section with all the metadata, and then the ABC 1, 2, 3 picture. Okay, that's going to be due back to Canvas next Monday, which is August 31st. Okay, and it's going to be obviously due electronically, and so let me exit out of the screen share here real quick. Okay. Since you're not turning in, if this were a traditional class, I would be asking you to turn it in, and I would be looking through it, but obviously we can't do that. You're going to be turning these in electronically, okay? And so there's a really easy way to scan. I presume, pretty much everyone, you either have a smartphone, or someone who has a smartphone, or maybe you have a scanner at home. It really doesn't matter. I'm going to show you how to do it on a smartphone with an app that is completely free. Okay, it doesn't cost you any money. It's available on Android and iOS. It's called Adobe Scan. So if you go to the Play Store on an Android or the App Store on an Apple, just type in Adobe Scan. Let me point to it. You see that right there? It's a little out of focus, but
yeah, I see it.
Adobe Scan right there. Open it, and you'll come up with this little screen. And you can see it opens up your camera, and you have a bunch of choices down here at the bottom row. You have, and I have to turn it around, you have whiteboard, which is like if you want to use a whiteboard, a form, a business card. The one you're going to want to use is just document, which is what it defaults to anyway. Okay, click document, and what you can then do for a specific journal entry, I've got my notebook here. All I have to do is be on document and make sure you have good lighting. Take that picture, and then let's say you have more than one entry. Flip the page, take the next picture. Boom, boom. Let's say this is a 5-page entry. I'm going to do 5 pages. 3, 4, and 5. And you know, I did that kind of quickly, but you know, make sure your hands aren't in it and so forth, so that nothing's actually blocking it.
Yeah.
And then once you've got, so you could do 1 page. Ideally, in an individual entry, you have multiple pages. That's very easy to do, by the way. You know, so I've got 5 pages here, right? Then I can just click on this little thing down here. Boop. And I can actually, it shows me the 5 different pages. And for whatever reason, it really washes everything out when I do it. So my recommendation is to go to the color tab here at the bottom, and then click on original color, and it brings it back to like it actually being a picture. For whatever reason, when it puts it into the scan mode, it washes everything out. It washes all the color out. So you can if you're a person who likes to clean up, there's various cleanup tools and so forth. Feel free to use those as much as you want, as long as it's legible and clear. That's what I care about. And then all you have to do then, once you're done and you can see the various pages all neatly arrayed here, you just click Save as PDF, and it'll save it. Sometimes it takes a minute or two, depending on how many scans you have. And then you have a number of different options. You can you know, share it. You can do a variety of different things. The best thing that you can do is click share, and then you can email it to yourself. Okay, you can click email, and you can send it to your personal email account, or you can share a copy. If you click share a copy, on my phone, it pulls out all the apps, and you could save it directly to your phone. I use OneDrive, which is like the Google version of, or the Microsoft version of Google Drive. If you have a Google Drive app on your phone, you can save it to that. However you manage your files. I mean, I'm not trying to tell you how to manage your files. You can email it to yourself again, but basically, whatever way you choose to do it, let's say I'm going to choose OneDrive, and I can just save it directly to my OneDrive. Or let's say I choose to do email, and then it comes up with my email here, and I can just email it to myself. And then I have it on my computer, right? Because all you have to do is open up your computer and download the PDF. There's your PDF right there. And all you then have to do is upload it to Canvas. Okay? And what I'll do, if I go back to the Canvas page here, all right, click on that. What I plan on doing for every week, where you're actually going to turn these in is going to be under weekly labs right here. So biology lab notebook, weekly lab. I'm going to create a new assignment. In fact, I'll do it right now. Where I'm going to call it the Introductory to Biology Lab Assignment. Okay. And I'm going to add that, and I'll publish it a bit later. All you'll have to do is go under week 1 and then click on that, and that's where you can upload your PDF for that week. Okay, and it'll be the same exact process week by week. There'll be a week 2 tab, and then the assignment for that week, you can upload it that way. So this is going to be something one submission per week. And at the very end of the semester, you'll combine it all into one single document and upload it all that way. But week by week, you'll upload it that way. And I'm actually thinking that every single individual assignment is worth 20 points. So this is about, every single week is about half an exam grade, if you think about it that way, about a third of an exam grade rather. So keep that in mind. I would, this introductory assignment that I'm asking you to do, about 45 minutes to an hour. And so remember, for the lab components of the class, typically every lab session is about 2 hours long, and that's twice a week in a typical biology 11 class. And so up to 4 hours a week, if this were a fully face-to-face class, we would be having up to 4 hours of lab time a week. And so think about this in terms of your lab time, the amount of time you actually spend doing your biology notebook, up to 4 hours for every individual thing. I've said for the purposes of this assignment, 45 minutes to an hour, feel free to go beyond that, but it should not be something that you throw together in 15 minutes. That's what I'm saying. And with that said, Annabelle, I know it's just you and I, but I'm speaking also to people on the recording. How does that sound?
Yeah.
I would say it's not an easy thing to do, but it's also, if you put yourself into it, it's really enjoyable. You'll learn a lot. You'll get a lot out of it on the other end, and it's basically the lab components of the class. It's your lab notebook.
Yeah.
So every week is going to be a little bit different, as I said. I'll give you more instructions week by week about what you need to do, with plenty of reminders and so forth. But that is what the notebook looks like.
Cool.
Pretty straightforward?
Yeah. I mean, some days will be harder than others with my depression, but it's not like I'm not trying. I'm gonna do my best.
Yeah, do your best. Let me know if you have any questions, if there's something that's not clear, if you're having a hard time making progress, send me an email, let me know. We can meet on Zoom for office hours, and we can talk about it that way.
Yeah. Cool.
All right. Well, I think I've been talking pretty long time already, so I can bow out of this for now, and for you, and then for folks on the recording, I'll probably get the second I do 2 lectures a week. One's already up on Canvas. I'll probably do the other one fairly shortly, within by tomorrow or Wednesday at the latest. The lecture 2. So yeah, this is the way it's going to go from here on out. About 2 lectures a week, 1 lab assignment a week, 1 notebook assignment, and then starting next week, there's going to be a quiz a week that are generally due on Monday. And this is all through Canvas. And so, if there's anything that's unclear, Canvas is our main hub. That's the way everything is organized. I'll do my best to make sure everything is clearly articulated in terms of what the expectations are. But and also for most weeks, I typically won't have a dedicated lab lecture of this length, maybe like 5 minutes just to broadly describe something. There will be one week where maybe our microbiologist who works on coronavirus, a virologist actually, may give us a tour of his lab, which will be a longer session for video. But most weeks will not involve me talking at length on the notebook itself. It'll be a document posted on Canvas that you then go do, but it won't be this most weeks. That we save this type of thing for lecture for the most part. And with that, I think I'll stop talking.
Okay, bye.
Bye, have a good one.
You too.